Okay, so we are starting another mentor interview with Amanda today. Amanda, could you give us just a brief introduction about yourself, like what school you go to, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. My name is Amanda Malowski. I am a current sophomore at San Diego State University, and I am a criminal justice major with a psychology minor, and I have cerebral palsy. I was born at 29 weeks in September, and ever since I was a little kid, I was really into adaptive sports. I actually met Anna through adaptive sports, which is pretty cool. And so that was my first pretty much major introduction to the disabled community because when I was growing up, my brother and I, who also has CP, were the only disabled kids in our school district up until we were about 10 years old, and I've had accommodations throughout my entire life. I had a 504 plan when I was in middle school and high school, and it pretty much carried over to when I applied to go to San Diego State when I was a senior in high school. And so at San Diego State, there's a place called the Student Ability Success Center for students that need accommodations and that have a variety of disabilities. And so through that organization at school, there's a whole like system with what you need to do to be considered a student there because you have to meet certain qualifications. And obviously, I met those qualifications because I had a 504 in place when I was in high school. Because it's especially difficult if you didn't have accommodations in high school to try and get them in college because it should be easier to transfer over if you had accommodations in high school. And so when normally under normal circumstances, I get time and a half for all like quizzes and tests at school, and I also get access to like the recorded lectures on Zoom to re-listen and rewatch just because sometimes like with my disability it impacts my timing speed because I can't type with both of my hands. And it's all the teachers are super accommodating. Like one professor that I have currently, she sends me the audio recording after every single lecture so I can rewrite and retype all of the notes from the lecture. And then one of the big reasons that I decided to go to San Diego State was one, it was the only school that I applied to that had a criminal justice program. And so I want to be a lawyer and I want to do like a prosecutor track basically. And so that's why I decided to major in criminal justice. But it also one of the reasons I went to SDSU was because they have an adaptive athletics program for track and field and as well as for wheelchair tennis. And so I was one of 3 athletes that are at SDSU currently and for the program. So that was also one of the reasons I decided to go to SDSU as well. I don't think I missed anything.
Yeah, that was a great introduction. Thank
Oh, good.
you. um, so I mentioned that you are an athlete there, right? Could you talk a little bit more about your experience thus far with being a student athlete and in college?
Yeah, sure. So obviously it's a lot different now than it would be normally. So when I was a freshman, the normal schedule um was we would train twice a day every day. In the mornings we would weight lift and then in the afternoons we would be at the track. And so I trained probably 3-4 hours a day in between school and doing schoolwork and being a part of my sorority as well. And unfortunately, because of COVID, I haven't actually competed for my school yet because we the whole thing shut down like weeks before we had to go to our first competition. So I don't know what it's like to compete yet as a collegiate athlete, but I know what it takes. It's a lot of work. It was definitely like a change from what I was doing when I was in high school because when I was in high school, the track coaches did what they could, but they weren't exactly willing to try and adapt things for me and just make new exercises for me that I would be able to do. Like in high school, in like the weight rooms and stuff like that, they wouldn't let me do any kind of like weights with the big bars, and they just weren't willing to try and adapt things for me, which is really hard and difficult because I told them that I wanted to do what all the other athletes were doing, but they weren't willing to accommodate things for me. So I had a positive experience when I was in high school, but it wasn't exactly where I would have liked it to be because since I'm an ambulatory athlete, in Illinois specifically, they only allow wheelchair athletes to compete at the state level. And it's especially difficult because if ambulatory athletes wanted to compete, we have to hit the able-bodied standards for to compete at state. And so, but in California, it's a lot different. They actually have standards for ambulatory athletes at the high school level. And so I kind of came in not knowing what I was doing, like form-wise, training-wise, because I wasn't exposed to the kind of adaptations that the California students that are in the program had. I didn't have those resources that they had. So everything was brand new to me in regards to like the training, the weightlifting. And so it was definitely eye-opening that like I could do all of those things, but I wasn't given the opportunity before I came to college.
So you found that it was actually a lot more accommodating in
Yeah.
college.
Yeah, so a lot of it has to do with like, so our strength and conditioning coach, he's a grad student at SDSU specifically for like training and like strength training. He's like a nutritionist as well, and he his emphasis is in adaptive training and workouts and things like that because he also works at the Olympic and Paralympic training facility in Chula Vista. So he has a bunch of experience and he was willing to learn and work with, he's willing to learn and work with us with what we can and can't do and what he thinks we can do. And so having that and then not having it in high school was a great like transition to how it was when I went to college because I didn't have that in high school and just when I was in high school they weren't willing to like go out of their way to adapt things for me whereas now in college they totally are.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was definitely I was so out of like looking back, I was so out of shape when I first went into the program because I had no idea what I was doing. I just, I did the workouts that I was supposed to, but I didn't know like what my form was in regards to like doing stuff outside the track because I would only do workouts on the track and I would sometimes do stuff like strength and conditioning, but I had no idea what I was doing. No one told me what I was doing was correct or incorrect because my form was going to obviously look different from that of the able-bodied athletes. So they just kind of let me do whatever I had like wanted, even though my form might have been incorrect, which it most likely was because I was basically doing strength and conditioning on my own, creating my own workouts when I was in high school.
Right. Yeah, that's good that now you finally have someone because I feel like in both college and high school for me, I had coaches that both did not have as much experience with disabled athletes, which was fine. But yeah, I think it definitely would have maybe changed things a little bit if I had a Paralympic
Yeah,
coach, which that's awesome that you've had that
yeah,
opportunity.
yeah.
Um, Okay. What about on like the more academic side? How do you feel like you've been able to kind of balance everything with, I mean, it sounds like you're very busy socially, academically, athletically.
Yeah, and I like being busy. Like even though it's like for a lot of people it could be like stressful, I enjoy being really busy because if I'm not busy, I go stir crazy. Like I cannot not do something. And um I guess I'm just really good with time management is what I could say because like when in normal circumstances when I'm at school, I would be working out at like 6 o'clock in the morning. I'd work out for an hour, an hour and a half, and then I'd go back to my dorm, I'd sleep for a couple hours, and I'd get up, get ready for school. I'd have like 2, 3 classes a day, and then after that, I would have track practice for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, and then, I would also have some more strength and conditioning, and then after that, I'd, like, grab a quick bite to eat, and then I'd go to my sorority house, and, I would have stuff there at my sorority house, and so it was really easy for me to kinda I had a very regimented schedule, and it was easy because, like, unlike other school programs where, like normal D1 schools with able-bodied athletes, the athletes schedule their school around their workout and their workout schedule and their meets or whatever. But with our program, because it's not really recognized by the school, it's recognized by the Student Ability Success Center because um, Akil Whitehead, who's the director of our program, works within the Student Ability Success Center. They schedule our workouts and strength and conditioning around all of our school because they know that school is more important. So it's been really easy to balance it because they know that we're students first, and they really recognize that we're there to learn, but and like that's the number one concern is that we have a good education first, and then everything else is second after that. So it's been really easy for them to accommodate to our schedules as students first and then athletes as second. And the Student Ability Success Center is amazing. Like, I didn't really know what to expect in going into school because when I was in high school, they just kind of like I had my sport plan and they never really like violated it or anything like that. They're just like, okay, do what you want in regards to like standardized tests as well as like doing stuff in PE that I couldn't physically do that I was mandated that I had to do. And like now it's like, oh, I had all these resources available to me when I was in high school, but I just didn't know about them. Whereas now that I'm in college, like this is all of your like we have a whole like system that we log into and we can see our accommodations, and then we just send our accommodations to our professors and they're like, okay. And then like they have all of that on file. Whereas when I was in high school, I didn't even know like I knew some of my teachers were aware of my accommodations, but none of my teachers went out of their way to be like, okay, these are your accommodations. What do you need from me? Whereas when now that I'm in college, you're like, okay, they reach out to me, like, here's all the stuff from today's lecture. If you need anything, let me know. And like, it's just been a lot easier navigating college as a person with a disability than it was when I was in high school because the school is aware of my accommodations and so are the professors.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective because I feel like I've talked to some other people with disabilities that they do feel like they have to advocate for themselves in college. Um, and some people say that that is hard, but others also, I think what's really interesting is that you've acknowledged that it's also really like liberating, right? It's
Mhm.
really cool to be like, oh, like I have control over this now. I know I'm
Mhm.
knowledgeable about this now, and I have the power to like help myself. Uh,
Yeah, that's definitely the case because when I this last semester, the one professor that I had issues with, like I sent him my accommodations and like he responded, but it was like a really weird situation. And so like before tests, I would email him and be like, "Hey professor, I need accommodations before the test. Here are my accommodations," because he had them, but like he didn't really like he acknowledged them right when he received them at the beginning of the semester, but he didn't acknowledge them at all like during like class or anything like that. And so then before we would have our like we only had 2 tests in this class, which was extremely stressful because that was our entire grade. And so the way the test performed in this specific class, you had an hour to write like a 10-page essay. And I was like, I can't do that. Like I physically am not able to do that. I need my time and a half. And he's like, okay, thanks for reminding me, despite being a very difficult professor. So I was like, some depending on the professor, you do have to advocate for yourself, but most of my college experience has been relatively positive and that I haven't had to, reach out to specific professors individually to remind them because they have all of that on file, but some professors I did have to be like, "Hey, here are my accommodations. Like, this is why I need time and a half. So like, you need to give it to me. Like, you're required to give it to me," which is what I have to do with this past professor. But other than that, I haven't had other like negative experiences with like having to advocate for myself.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, let's see. Are there any like I know you've kind of talked about this one specific professor being somewhat of a challenge, but on the other side of it, what are some triumphs you would say, like some more specific triumphs that you say you've had in college? Because it seems like have had it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I mean, I grew up in a really small town and I wanted to go so far away from my small town and like the kids I grew up with and the high school I went to. Like I had a graduating class of about a little over 300 people and we all knew each other. We all grew up with each other and not that I experienced bullying when I was like little and when I was in like middle school, and I didn't really experience it when I was in high school, but my brother did. But like I felt like when I was in high school, people only saw me. They didn't see me, they saw my disability and they saw that like, that they acknowledged that like I was apparently hopeful and they did a lot of special things that I don't think they like it was weird. Like at one point when I was in high school, they like shouted me out at a student assembly and I was embarrassed because I was like, would you do this for somebody else? Are you doing this for me because I have a disability? And like I felt an overwhelming sense of pity when I was in high school because of my disability and because like they're like, oh, your disability doesn't define me. I was like, yeah, it doesn't, but it's also a huge part of who I am. Like my disability motivates me because like the Paralympics have been such a big part of my life and who I am as a person, but my disability isn't all encompassing in who I am. And so when I went to college, I was scared to death that I would have the same experience that I had in high school. But like I go to school with over 35,000 people. It's a D1 school, so athletics are a huge part of it, even though our athletics aren't exactly the greatest. But it's been interesting to like. It's also I think it's because it's California, it's not the Midwest, and so it's been a huge culture shock for me because people just don't care. They don't care at all, and it's especially been the case when I like went through sorority recruitment. Like I was very adamant before I went to college that I wouldn't go through sorority recruitment because I was like, I'm going to be the only disabled person that goes through it. They're not going to see me. They're going to see my disability, and then I'm not going to be in any sorority. And like I just had a very positive experience with my sorority, and I recognize that it's probably not like that for everyone that has a disability that's gone through sorority recruitment. But I love the people that I'm with. I love the organizations that I'm a part of. And they don't like, yes, they acknowledge that I have a disability. They don't sweep it under the rug like they did when I was in high school. Like, it's like those, like people, it's kind of like the color blindness, like people that don't acknowledge race, they also don't acknowledge if you have a disability. Like, oh, um, yes, you have a disability, but like, oh my gosh, you're an amazing person. I'm like, yes, but I agree. Like, it doesn't define who I am, but it's important to acknowledge it because it's a part of who I am. And that's definitely like not been the case like at school. Like they acknowledge that I have a disability, but they know that it doesn't define who I am, and it's important to like recognize it because I feel like people just don't do it because they're afraid of offending people and they're afraid of saying the wrong thing. But it's all about like educating them, and I know like it's not our job to do it, like they're supposed to do it themselves, but I also think we're also somewhat responsible as well because they're not going to actively do it themselves unless they're exposed to the disabled community. And so, like, I like being an activist. I know a lot of people don't like doing that, but like, how else are they supposed to learn? Because a lot of the times they don't want to go out of their way to learn about this disabled community unless they're exposed to someone like that. And so it's been a very relatively positive experience at school. because it's also very ADA friendly at school. Like I see a lot of disabled people. I don't know them, but like it's comforting to see like people that look like me at school. And although it's a very small percentage, like they're not like shunned aside or anything like that at school. At least in my personal experience.
Yeah, I love how you talked about how different like it is from high school to college because like even though I went to college in the Midwest and a small school still, I actually had a similar experience of like people did treat me very differently and I was able to gain a new perspective on my own disability and become more of an advocate in that outlet and I like that a lot more than
Yeah, like
how I
it's
dealt with it in high school.
yeah, it's definitely like because in my own sorority, like they actively like seek like a lot of my friends like do their own research in regards to like the disabled community and they even reach out to me like what can they do to support the disabled community because I'm obviously very vocal about it and so like having those kind of friends that actively seek to like educate themselves in the disabled community whereas when I was in high school nobody did anything like that. They're just like, oh, you have a disability, I'm sorry. It's like, why are you sorry? Like, I don't understand, like, why are you sorry? Like, I'm not. I got to travel around the world because of my disability, because I don't know why you're sorry for me because you don't get to travel the world. You don't get to compete for Team USA. I do. And so and like my friends at college, they're like, "Oh my God, that's so cool." And like they acknowledge my disability and a lot of the times like you know when you're talking about the Paralympics, you have to like, do you know what they are? And they're like, oh yeah, the Special Olympics. At my college, they're like, oh yeah, I know what the Paralympics are. And I'm always so shocked because it's like it's the Paralympics. People don't know what the Paralympics are, and so just know that like it's different in California because like they act. I feel like the culture in California is like they seek to educate themselves on like people and organizations that they're not familiar with, whereas everywhere else they see it. They don't like, oh, that's cool. I want to learn more about it. They don't do that in other, I would say, in other areas of the country. Whereas in California and the West Coast specifically, like they seek to know more about things that they're not familiar with, especially in the case of my sorority, like we have our own specific like chair within our sorority where we actively seek to include everyone of like different backgrounds, different races, different disabilities and things like that. Even though I'm the only one with a noticeable disability in my sorority, they actively seek to include everyone and like that's why I love my sorority and that's why I love my school because I don't feel like I'm an outsider.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think college is that they do I think in general college creates a good environment of like just to question things before you assume things. I would say. I don't know, I think at least that's been my experience as well is I think people are more open to like learning because that's what you're there for. Um,
Right, exactly.
yeah, and
You're
that
paying for an
includes other
education.
people. Yeah, and that includes like learning about your fellow classmates as well, which I think is a cool experience in college that you don't necessarily get in high school.
Right.
Yeah. So you did touch upon this a little bit when you were talking about your experience in high school versus in college, but is there something that you wish you had known specifically about like the college process before you even like really started it? Because I know I like found some stuff out in college and I was like, why did I not know this when I was looking for colleges?
Yeah, like a lot of it, I feel like I don't know if it's been the case for you, but like I've literally had to like at my specific school, they don't necessarily like advocate for people to like take minors. You have to basically do that all on your own. Like I remember like this is just recent for me where I was like I want a minor in psychology, but I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea where I need to go, what I need to do, and so I would email like the correct people and they're like, oh, you need to go to this, you need to do this, and you need to schedule an appointment before you like they were like, yes, you're emailing me, but that's not what you need to do in order to like request to have a minor. And so a lot of it you have to figure out on your own, which is a little difficult. And you shouldn't have to do that on a college campus, especially a big one like San Diego State, because it's a big school, and you basically like on it's one of the things that they're lacking is that students have to like actively search for. It's not easy to find a lot of resources at school. It's not very accessible even for people that don't have disabilities. It's incredibly difficult because it's like I have no like people don't know what they're doing. Like just in general at my school, if they want to, change their major, add a minor, uh, get rid of a minor, because it's like it's there, but they don't like, oh, hey, look, this is what you can do if you want to have a minor. And it's one of the things that I think my school struggles with is because even though like the vast majority of the students are able-bodied, it's not even accessible for them either because they're like they just don't, what's the word, advertise all these resources that are available to them, because it's like we're kind of expected to do everything on our own. Like I'm lucky that I have the Student Ability Success Center to guide me in regards to like accommodations and things like that. But anywhere else, you're kind of on your own. And I know when I was in high school, you had, your counselors and things like that that were, at least for me, they were like very accessible, and I like would go see my counselor for like college stuff every day. But like it's especially difficult now because there's like hundreds of majors and minors, and there's like specific people for all these types of positions in regards to like scholarships and advising for your academics and what classes you should take, what you shouldn't take. And so it's kind of been a hit or miss process in regards to like school, because like I didn't realize that one of the classes I was taking last semester was unnecessary until I went to that like academic advising mid-semester to take classes for this semester. And it's frustrating that I wasted like, money on a class that I didn't need to take because I didn't know I didn't need to take it. And so it's on part of the school, but it's also, I feel like a lot of the times the school blames the students, even though we don't know because the school doesn't take the time to tell us, like, these are the classes that you need to take. And like, yes, it does have to do with like, we do have to advocate for ourselves, but like, we don't know how to advocate for ourselves and we don't have the resources available to us. And it's not a clear path of this is where you need to start and this is what you need to do and this is how it ends. So that's how it's been at my school, but I don't know how it is at smaller schools. I'm sure it's probably a little bit easier since there's not a lot of students, but that's what it's been for my school since it's such a big school.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel you a little bit on that. I think I've definitely learned how to like figure out who to talk to, like figure out the right people to talk to when it comes to advocating. I realize that that's like a huge part of being successful in your
Yeah.
advocacy is finding who will support you and like who um, knows the right people. Also,
It's
yeah.
yeah, it's basically that, like you have to reach, like you have to know who to reach out to, who they can connect you with so that you can have a successful college experience. If you're not like, worst comes to worst, you have to like take an extra semester because, you took the wrong classes or you didn't take enough classes in order to graduate.
Right, exactly, and that's always so annoying. Yeah.
Like I'm scared to death that because I messed up this last semester with some classes that, I'm already planning on taking classes in the summer, but like because I messed up, I mean, thankfully I messed up early on versus, as an upperclassman, but like it's like, I have to take classes in the summer to make up for the mistakes that I made like in the middle of the school year.
Yeah, and it does get complicated. I know people that like study abroad and it's yeah, their credits get messed up that way too. Yeah, it's annoying.
Yeah, that's college for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone has to deal with that unfortunately. Um okay. Any final thoughts, any piece of advice you'd give to someone that's thinking about going to college or is a freshman?
I would say, I mean, for one thing, just in general, apply to as many scholarships as you can. Like, I mean, I don't know if you're gonna touch upon the fact that like if you get like Social Security in order to help with college or vocational rehabilitation. Like one of the things that like vocational rehabilitation, especially for Illinois, for me specifically, it's been a godsend. Like my counselor is amazing. Like she's amazing. Like I really lucked out with her, and she's really helped me in regards to financing with like my school and what classes I need to take. Even though she's a government official, she's with the state. She's really like taken upon herself to really help me. And I wouldn't be going all the way to San Diego if it wasn't for vocational rehabilitation. Like I'm lucky that I'm able to, use my disability in order to pay for school. So I would say for students that are that have disabilities and that are looking to go to school, you need like when you're senior in high school, you need to immediately reach out to the Department of Human Services or Rehabilitation. I don't know exactly the words. Sorry, I don't really know.
Okay.
My dad did a lot of the work. He helped me really do all the process because it takes about a year. And so I would say once you're a senior in high school, I'm lucky because I'm older. So when I was a senior in high school, I turned 18 right as I like became a senior because you have to turn 18 to get the services, obviously, because you're an adult, a legal adult. And so I would say immediately reach out to like just look up vocational rehabilitation in your state. And luckily for Illinois, Illinois struggles with a lot of things, but they don't struggle, at least in my experience, with vocational rehabilitation because it covers, I would say, 85% of the cost of me going to school. Like, I pay maybe $1,000 out of pocket. And like, yes, it seems a lot to some, but it's also just a minuscule amount in regards to like how expensive college is nowadays. And I'm really lucky and thankful that I don't necessarily have to worry about, you know, having to pay for school because I'm using my disability in order to get through school. And so I'd say just before you're 18, look out for the resources that are available to you as a disabled person, and you know have your parents also advocate for yourself on your behalf if you're not 18, just because I know a lot of people that are younger seniors that can't get the resources right away because they're not 18 yet. And so I just make sure to get on top of that because it takes a while. I don't know how it is in other states, but Illinois, it takes about like I would say 9 months, and so I know in some other states it takes a lot longer for them to get the services they need through vocational rehabilitation as well. Because I'd say like so what they do, you have to in order to do that, you have to fill out FAFSA in order to get the services, and so make sure you fill out your FAFSA and then reach out to the correct people and kind of keep an open mind when it comes to like I know it's stressful when things don't go your way, but it's also like okay, if it doesn't go my way this time, what steps do I need to take in order for it to go my way the next time? Because a lot of things aren't in our control, like COVID, nothing is in our control right now. Like you have to understand that what's happening right now is not normal. It is not normal whatsoever. And I think it's important because, we're keeping this in mind going into hopefully when things go back to normal within like the next year or so that schools have recognized that they have to accommodate no matter what because they've had to accommodate with what's been happening right now. And so it's like okay, now that you've accommodated, you need to stay like schools and institutions need to stay like this in order to like continue to accommodate students that have always needed these accommodations, but they've only started using these accommodations due to the pandemic. And so I think it's important to you know just make sure your voice is always heard and reach out to other people so like you're not alone and so that you're not the only one that's going through this, and contacting right people, making sure you have a support system in regards to, getting the resources that you need. I'm lucky because I have that within my disability services at school, because I'm literally like the director of the athletic program works within the student disability services. So I'm lucky on that aspect as well, because if I need something and I don't get it, he'll literally do it on my behalf. And I think it's important to realize that, we are disabled, but we're also students and we have rights as students regardless of our disability. And so it's important to do what we need to do, our due diligence in order to, be respected as a student as well as a student with a disability. And so I think it's important to, research what disability services schools offer, because that's what I did before I applied to schools. Because when I like looked at, Notre Dame, when I looked at Alabama, and then when I looked at University of Illinois, they had them, but it was more geared toward like, Alabama and University of Illinois have very big adaptive athletic programs, but like their resources for like students with disabilities, it was very difficult to find. And so at SDSU, obviously the program's up and coming for athletes with disabilities, but they have a very strong disability services program. So I feel like it's important to recognize, like, yes, you want to go for education, but what resources do you have as a disabled student that's available to you? Because I feel like if schools don't have a strong resource for students with disabilities, I don't think it's worth going, because who's going to advocate for you on your behalf if, professors are being difficult, because that's what the disabled services is for. So I feel like I'm rambling at this point, but I'm sorry.
No, I mean, you gave so much helpful information. Like, I just even learned something new. I didn't really do the vocational rehabilitation thing stuff, so I did not know about that. So that's really helpful information. And also, yeah, I definitely echo your advice of talking to disability services. That is very important.
Yeah, because I think when I was a senior, when I was applying, well, I guess junior/senior, when I was applying for schools, like in order to get the services at SDC, you have to like you apply to the school, and then you also have to apply to get the services. So it's a whole separate entity on top of applying to be a student there. So I feel like that may be cases for a lot of other big schools as well. But you have to make sure that you apply to the school first, and then you see, okay, do I need to do anything on top of being a disabled student? And most of the time you have to. Like, I had to submit like medical forms as well as like my transcript to school to, get the services that I needed, that I have right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I definitely had a lot of communication with my disability services as soon as I decided. So yeah, makes sense. Okay, well, thank you so much, Amanda. Like I said, I even just learned so much from you. So this was awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.